Hey guys, Mr. Roach here. For me recording, it is Monday, January 26th. Our schedule got turned around a little bit. We had an extra day off of school. So my intention is to record this for January 27th, although you might just be watching later on. But if you're watching in class on January 27th, 2026, I am not here. You should be with Mr. Berlin. This is our video notes for today, so follow along. My recommendation for you would be to pause problems before I try them, and then you can try them yourself and then compare against the video. Of course, Mr. Berlin would also be able to help you as he teaches pre-algebra. Make sure you're being polite to each other, to Mr. Berlin. High expectations when Mr. Roach is gone. So just make sure that you're being a good community member and you're taking care of your own business. If you are here on January 27th, you should have already completed the warm-up quiz that is posted in today's folder. So hopefully you've done that. You feel good about that because we are going to be talking about some of those concepts more in detail today. One of those concepts you would have had to have done is distribution. Those are the types of problems that look something like this. When you have a proportion, like I said, there are a couple of these on the actual warm-up quiz, is when you do your butterfly method or cross product, you are going to have to distribute. So I've got one more distribution problem. This one's got a little bonus where you have to combine Chuck Norris's, you have to combine like terms. So once again, pause the video here, see what you can do, and then when you unpause it, I'll go over it myself. So hopefully you've tried this out yourself as a extra warm-up here, just as an extra good review of what we've been learning. One thing that we see pretty frequently is people forget to distribute the 4 to everything within that parenthesis. So make sure you distributed that 4 to the -1. My first step would be rewriting my problem like this. 4x minus 4 comes out of distribution. I've got some Chuck Norris's that can combine a grand total of 6 x's there for you. So there's my second step. And if I can get it looking like this, we're hoping that it becomes more and more comfortable. Now I've got a 2-step problem where I've got to get those numbers away from x. Opposite of subtracting 4 is adding 4. Opposite of multiplying by 6 is dividing by 6. And I would get x is 9. So a good review of solving there for you. If you miss it, see if you can spot your mistake or ask a neighbor or Mr. Berlin a question. But I have a question for you. That question is our trivia question of the day. The stick thingy that a conductor uses is called what? Pause the video, make your guess. It is a baton. That is called a baton. Kind of like track has a baton where you hand off the baton to the next person. Yeah, there you go. Goals today, being able to evaluate and compare using ratios, setting up and verifying proportions. This is going to be a big one. A reminder that proportions are 2 ratios, and we want to either make sure they are proportional, like the paint cans. I want to make sure that the paint that I'm buying is the same that I already have in my house. Or I'm solving for an unknown spot on one of the ratios, one of the 4 spots. So here's another quick test. We talked about this last week of when we teach this, sometimes people just cross multiply willy-nilly. They butterfly method willy-nilly. Ask yourself on which of these could you or would you be allowed to cross multiply? And the only one that you should have said yes is this guy. This would be like, hey, are these 2 things actually equal to each other? And a reminder, when we cross multiply, we go that wing or that multiplying problem equal to that multiplying problem. This would be a case where I know all 4 spots and I'm just making sure that these 2 things are equal to each other. If I don't see the equal sign, we're going numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. And then this one, you'd have to find a common denominator. So already said this. Here's some more examples. When you are using cross multiplying, you are either making sure, hey, these 2 things are equal to each other, or you don't know one of the 4 spots and you need to figure that spot out. You will see some distribution. You should have seen some on your warm-up quiz, like I said, but this wing right here would be 3 times x and 3 times 2, also known as a good distribution problem. So there's a result of that red wing. And then in green, I would put that equal to it would be 12. So that would be the problem I'm left solving. Now, if I was a person who wrote tests, I would put this one on the test. Be a good one to really make sure you know what you're doing. This one I think is really cool. If you wanted to study an animal population, it'd be really hard to capture every single owl that ever exists in northern Minnesota. So what they do is they catch as many as they can. They put a little tag on them, if you've ever seen that tag around their feet. They put a little tag on them, and then they release them back into the wild. And they might come back later that year, they might come back 2 years later, and they capture them again, and they make a proportion out of, hey, these ones have already been tagged by us, we caught these last year, and these ones are new. They're new owls, and it helps them come up with a little estimate. So in my little picture here, these are the owls in this area. The blue ones, these guys have been tagged before. They were captured and tagged. So in a research in northern Minnesota, researchers caught and tagged 5 spotted owls. Well, 5 out of how many? I have no idea. That's what we're trying to figure out, right? Is I want to know how many are there. So they walked up to this forest, they captured 5, and they tagged 5 out of a grand total of IDK. No idea. Could be any amount. And that's where my variable is going to go, is the bottom. Oops, I said volume, but I wanted to say total. I just turned on the volume of my computer. That's why I subconsciously went on there. So later they came back. This is maybe a year later. This is maybe 24 hours later. Who knows? They captured 7 owls. Of those 7, 2 were tagged. So going back to this picture, they came back. Here are the owls that they captured. Out of the 7 that they captured, 2 were tagged. Now this is where you need to be really careful of making sure everything is nice and aligned. If I put tagged on the top of my first fraction, I need to put the other tagged amount on the top of my fraction. So I'm going to put 2 tagged on the top and a grand total of 7 that they captured. Now, you probably wouldn't want to only do this once, and we'll see that in an example here in a second. It would be much better for you to do this multiple times and run multiple experiments. The more that you do it, the more accurate you're going to be. But this will give us a pretty good idea of how many owls I have. This wing right here, I'll call the blue wing, is 2 times x. This wing right here, I'll call the purple wing, is 5 times 7. And now I've got a little math problem to solve that'll help me figure out how many total owls there are in this area. Divide both sides by 2, divide both sides by 2. Now, a reminder that this is just an estimate, right? 35 divided by 2 is going to be a decimal. So we're not 100% sure, but we're giving it a pretty good shot or a pretty good guess. A reminder that this calculator, please don't use this one. This one, if it ever loads, is no good because you're not going to be able to use it. Instead, you can see I already have mine pulled up on Safari there. If you go to our Schoology page in our course, you can find a scientific calculator right here at the top. Just gonna have to press start twice, but this is a really good one, or you can borrow mine in the back as long as you take care of them and put them back. So if I do this, and maybe you don't need it for this problem, but I might need it for a problem in the future, so I'm gonna pull it up. 35 divided by 2 is 17 and a half owls. I don't know if that's really even possible. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to round that out as a guess that there are 18 owls living in that particular forest or that area of northern Minnesota. So if you want to fill in these blocks, if you're taking notes at home, you would want to set up a proportion, aka two ratios, that compare the tagged amount to total amount. You would then find the cross product and solve for the missing variable. So we'll try this again. Now, here's one where they did multiple samples, right? They went to a lake, they caught fish, they tagged them. A lot of times they put them in their dorsal fin, and then they put them back. And then later in the year, they wanted to figure out the population. So this time they took 3 different samples. So right away, if I read the first line, a fish expert informs you that 50 fish were caught, tagged, and released. That's my initial amount. When they began this experiment, they want to know how many walleye were in the lake. So they caught 50. They tagged those 50 out of, no idea. I don't know how many fish were there, so that is my total. 50 out of the unknown thing that I'm going to try to find. Later, they took 3 samples. Now, you'd probably even want to do more than 3. You'd probably do like 10 or 100, or you'd come back on different years. But we're going to use this table to keep track of all our information. So in the first sample, they caught 30 fish. That were the total number of fish in that sample, and 10 of them had a tag. The next sample, 15 were caught, and 6 of them were tagged. And then they came back 1/3 time, and out of 20 that were captured, 14 of them were tagged. So we're going to use this last category. That's going to give us the most accurate kind of look at this situation, I guess you would say. So out of that's 55, 65, or sorry, 70. Oh my gosh, Roach, back up. This is 50, Mr. Roach, you need to add. Or you could just use the calculator, you have on the other screen. Out of the 50 plus 15 is 65 total fish. There we go, feeling better about that. I really don't want to mess up this next one. 30 of them were caught. That's 20 plus 10 was 30. So I'm going to use that last column in comparison to my original capture and release. And I'm going to say there were 30 tagged in my experiments out of the 65 total that I caught. If you want to flip these fractions, that's fine. If that works better in your brain, just make sure that total is always lined up with total and tagged is always lined up with tagged. But I'm going to go ahead and take my cross product. I'm going to cross multiply, kind of go diagonally here and work in this area. So I have 30 times x, and then I'm going to use my calculator here, 50 times 65. 50 times 65, bam. 3,250 is my other cross product. To solve this, divide by 30. I remember I told you this last week, but if you don't want to type out that long number, or maybe it was like a weird, wacky decimal to begin with, you can use the answer key down below. That, of course, disappeared on me when I zoomed in on it. But you can use that A and S at the bottom there on the negative symbol. So you go second. Hey, please use my second or my last answer. And I'm going to go ahead and divide by 30. 108.3 repeating. But if I'm talking about walleyes, 108.3 walleyes doesn't really make sense. This guy tells me to round down. It is below 5. So I'm going to take an estimate that there are 108 of this species of fish in the lake. Nice. This is my last one. Again, I would recommend that you pause and try it on your own, and then you can see if you got the correct answer here. But this is another one. This time, if you didn't want to survey every single student at MMW, you might survey a population of them. They do this a lot with like elections, just to get kind of general like polling and feeling about candidates or how the election is going for certain people. It's hard to interview everybody ever who votes or everybody who comes to your restaurant. So you might take a sample of them and then see if you can beef that up to match how many total people are in your school or in the US or whatever. So MMW, hopefully you've paused and tried it. MMW is conducting a survey on student organization. 90 students responded to the survey. Of those, 30 say that they feel that their iPad is well organized. So if I stop right there, I would have 90 total students and 30 who feel that they are organized, responded a certain way to my survey. I'll keep going. If we assume that these results are in proportion with the whole school, how many students out of the 1,200 feel like their iPad is well organized? Now, you might have done this fraction a little bit different than me. I wrote it like this on purpose because this guy is a total, and however you have it written, you just need to make sure that that 1,200 is in line with your 90. So if you want to put them on the bottom, that's great, 30 out of 90. But then 1,200 should be on the bottom, 1,200. I need to figure out how many are organized. That's the thing that I don't know. So I'm going to put X here to represent the total organized. Again, if you did this a little bit differently than me, you could have written it like this, and you should get the same answer. Either way that you do it, when you take your cross product, you are going to get 90 times X. That would be this wing of your butterfly. And you would get 30 times 1,200. Use my calculator for this. $36,000. And you can use that answer key ANS on your calculator to help you out. But I've got 36,000 divided by 90. So we would assume that about 400 students feel that they are organized. Bam. I will be here. So if you're watching this on the 27th, I will be here the rest of the day. I might even be coming in at the end of your hour or about halfway through your hour. So come and find me today if you need me. If you've got homework today, it is a Schoology quiz. I would use some notability to show your work and just make sure that you're feeling good about it. Ask Mr. Berlin questions, ask your neighbors questions, and see if you can get out of here with no homework. But come and find me, send me a Schoology message if you need me. Next class tomorrow, we are going to be reviewing for your quiz, which will be happening on Thursday. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a great day.